Hi there, this is Wes at Bad Seed Games, and this is going to be the next update in the blog. And for the most part, I've got a working animation system going. The main thing that I'm going to do, well, actually, let me show it to you first. I've been able to figure out that whole hopping animation blend thing. There are a couple great people on the Unity forums that helped me understand this. Names are escaping me at the moment, but I'll see about posting a link. As you can see, the character is running. Now this is just a basic stock run that comes with the tutorial files. I just needed something to kind of use as a proxy. And the actual animation, all of the animation is not quite yet finished. Like I said, it does take time to do well, and sadly I am a bit of a perfectionist. Pro tip, that's not a good thing, because it usually means that you're second guessing yourself a heck of a lot. But, there, let's turn off the spider. As you can see, let's get this going. I've paired it up with the camera system that I had previously, which is the same camera system that was worked on in the tutorials. I can link that to you. I can link to that in the description if you'd like. But if you remember, as I was moving around, it would start hopping, and I've been able to figure out why this was happening. Now the reason why is because the animations that I had, it was expecting everything to start off on the same foot. But I had a couple where I just did a quick little hash together and I just mirrored the side steps, and unfortunately that led to them being out of sync. Now the reason why this does it is, I think the explanation was with the blend tree. It tries to basically normalize the speed, and if you had, for example, the walk forwards, so let me pull this up. If you notice that it looks like it's got the left foot forward, and the left foot in this one would be the one to go back first, while the right foot would go in the arc, pass above. It's in the same thing in all of the other states. So as you can see, this is unfinished, but let's put this back here. As you can see, as it goes, the foot goes over and then slides. It's the same foot in each of these states. The foot goes over and then slides. Same with the walking backwards. Foot goes over and then slides. And that was the reason why it wasn't actually matching properly. And there's another thing that I also learned about the Mecanim system, is that when you are working with a blend tree, Unity will do its best to make sure that all of the tracks are normalized. Now, I'm not sure if I'm using this word correctly, but as best I can understand it, basically tries to match them so that if you have a frame that's, say, 26 frames, as this walk forwards is, if the side step left is half of that, so 13, it will then decide to try and speed that up, or at least blend it at the normalized point. So say frame 1 on the 26 would match with the frame 1 on the 13. Frame 5 on the 26 would match with frame 5 on the 13 would match on the frame 10 of the 26. It gets awfully technical, and I'm sure there's someone that could do a much better job of explaining it than I can, so I'm just going to leave that to someone else. But as you can see, it now walks when you want it to walk. It now runs when you want it to run. And the motions when you want the sidestepping and the backward stepping, it no longer does that weird ass little hop. Alright, now I'm going to show you a little bit about how I've got this set up. Initially I've got this as the main lower torso. Now this is controlling all of the animation, but in an upper level, the reason why I have it as all of the main animation in the main layer is because there are going to be some states where I'm going to need to have it animate all of them. And for that, I'm just going to, whenever I transition in, I'm just going to tell Playmaker to take the animation control weight, which is this slider here, which is grayed out, and decrease it back to 0. So for example, say you're falling, you don't necessarily just want the lower torso to move, you want the whole torso to move, but having the lower torso and the upper torso controlling and matching, it's really tricky. So instead of just trying to sync them up, I'm just going to slide the weight down to 0, and then transition into, say, a jump or a death animation or something like that. In the upper torso here, as you notice, I've got a couple of the substates. Now, the substates are mainly for ease of use, because I kind of noticed that I don't know if this is planned or if this is something that they are working on right now, or if they have no intention. I don't know. I don't know what the minds of the Unity devs. But so far, whenever you copy and paste things in Mecanim, it will only copy the action that you are hovering over. So let's create some empties. Here, let's do a quick little basic transition. Now, if you highlight both of them, and if you right-click and copy, it's going to copy the state that the mouse is over. So it's going to copy new state, so when I click paste, it's there. And as such, unfortunately, it doesn't store any of the transitions. So let's get rid of those. But as you can see, there's quite a few in here. Now, I needed to figure out when to transition from the idle to the walk, from the walk to the run to the fire, and all back and such like that. So I needed to set up quite a few rather interesting transitions. And I'll go over them in just a minute, but if I was to basically recreate them all, and I did this once before, if I were to recreate them all in here, that's a lot of work to do. So I just decided, okay, you know what? These substates are a little tricky to get your head around, but once you've got your head around them, they're really potent. So I thought, okay, well, why don't I just create each weapon as its own substate, then I can copy the substate and then paste it. And it will store all of the states and all of the transitions. Now, it won't store the transitions going back to the level that it's in. So, as you'll notice, this one's a copy of 5. This has 2 one going from and one going back. And if you notice, there are no transitions going in here. And that one's actually easier to fix. But this was mainly to shave off some of the work. And as you know, being a game developer, any amount of work that you can save and shave down on is time earned. Alright, now a little bit of an explanation as to how these states work. The idle, it has 4 states, 4 individual states going to the walk. The reason being is that I figured out with the logic structure that the transitions take into account, separate states constitute an OR argument, whereas the same transition constitutes an AND transition. So in this one, I needed to have, say, if x, which is the float value of the x movement from the axis of the control system, which is same with the tutorials that I've got set up. It's basically, I'm feeding that into Mecanim, so it's giving me a float value between -1 and 1 in both the x and the z. So I'm feeding that in, and if x is greater than 0.1, then it transitions. Or if x is less than -0.1, then it transitions as well. Same for the z. Now I've made these non-atomic. Now the default is atomic, and from what I understand, atomic means this transition cannot be interrupted. For that, I needed to make sure that the transition could be interrupted at any point. For example, say if you're in the middle of a reload animation and an enemy actually takes you down to 0 health. You don't necessarily want to have your character finishing this reload animation if this animation is long, for them to then do that whole falling down dead animation. So that's why I made sure that these are not atomic. Now, in order to transition to each state, I've got them all set up with the working on the X and the Z, and the ones going from the run is working on a Boolean called running, which is what I'm feeding in from the player manager and movement system here. This really big and beastly one. And this is still a work in progress. I'm constantly retooling and refining this one to get it a little bit more. And the way that I fed that information in was basically with the animator actions. Now, the thing you have to keep in mind with the animator actions, whenever you are setting in a parameter, it's going to look for a hard-coded string value. Now, you can set it up with a string variable in the actual... well, I'll fix that. You can set it up with a string variable such as a... Let's just drop something in real quick. String, add, and there. And you can feed it the string variable like that, or you can hard code it in. Now the thing is, much like the get and the set, This is kind of tricky, so you have to make sure that once you've decided on an actual parameter to have in Mecanim, you kind of got to stick with it. Or if you change it, you have to keep a mental note so that you can go back to all the things that you need to go back and change them. Let's just get rid of all the things that I just did here. Remove component. Okay. Alright, so back to Mecanim. Now the reason why I've got this set up like this is because I have an integer value for weapon, which is being controlled by the player again in the weapon tracker system. Whenever a weapon is activated, it'll then say, okay, tell Mecanim this is the weapon identification from 1 to 6. So it'll switch from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 and to 6. Now the way that I have them sending back are basic weapons not equals values. And the way that I've got them sent in is weapon is equal to. Now the weapon change itself right now, as you can see, it had that weird bear animation. This is basic, just a proxy that I needed to have in here so that I could sort of figure out what's going on. Because if it's an empty state, it's going to assume that there is no information that you want to overwrite. So, since this is an override layer, it will, since if there is no animation data in a state, it will then say, okay, well then I guess I'm going to make sure that whatever action is in the previous layer, which is controlling the rest of it, like the whole body, is going to take over. That led to a little bit of jerkiness and a little bit of inconsistent movement. Something I'm not quite sure of, but I was given a great tip on Reddit. Basically, try taking this, I called it a feeder state. Take this feeder state and turn it into an animation state. And even if that animation state has if it's only like 1 or 2 frames of your character standing with their hands where their weapons would be stored, that's pretty simple. And that also allowed me to do a little bit more blending fun, I guess it is. Alright, but as you can tell, this is pretty much a progress at this point. It's certainly not finished at this level, but it's, as you can tell, progress is certainly going on. And when it comes down to it, I'm going to see about trying to keep to this whole posting on a much more regular basis on the weblogs, even if I only have a small thing to talk about. Mainly because I've got to get myself back into the habit of posting regularly, as some of you are probably painfully aware. I've unfortunately let some of the other videos that I've made kinda slack just a bit, and I really don't want this to be one of those, sorry I'm late, I'm going to post some more videos guys soon, I promise. I really don't want to say that, so I'm not gonna, but I will be working on more things. I've got so many tutorials in mind. I just have to get up the courage, because this is a little bit of a confession. I actually live with a depressive disorder, and some days that makes it difficult to stay focused on task. I'm not using it as an excuse, it's more of a, this is just how it is kind of things. So, and I'm sure some of you also understand what it's like to live with depression. Sometimes, no matter how much you may want to, you just can't get the forward momentum needed to do the things that you need to do. But other than that, things are actually progressing, and since the bottleneck of the Mecanim system has actually been uncorked, it seems like things are actually going a lot better, because the main fear that I had was that I would have to lose all the data for the animation, and since I've been able to basically come to grips with it, it's actually been helping to keep me a little bit more going. So I guess that's pretty much it for this week's blog. I hope... oh, there is one more thing that I kind of want to show you. I'm not quite sure if it's going to look all that fancy. I'm not quite sure if it's going to work very well, because I'm not sure if it's hooked up in this test level. But... come on. Grenades. This was made with the help of JeanFabre on the Playmaker community. He was actually quite kind enough to help me with translating an action. Now he calls it the physics shoot. Now he did so, and I don't think he actually posted it on the forums, and I'm thinking he might actually have plans to sell it in which case I feel incredibly fortunate. But if he does sell it, it's definitely worth it. Absolutely worth it. Because it's just literally, it's made this mechanism possible. Because before I was having a hard time actually wrapping my brain around the physics of getting the actual grenade to travel in a realistic arc. And I'm going to admit it. I'm an artist. I'm not a tech. So the higher end maths and the coding and stuff like that, it may as well have been in hieroglyphics. Because I just don't have the head for that kind of stuff. But that said, grenades and a thrown weapon action is working. So yeah, progress is certainly coming along. And let's turn on the spider. So I've been able to actually get the Mecanim base started on this one. And as you can probably tell, if you are arachnophobic, please let me know if this animation kind of gives you the willies, because if it does, then I'll consider it a resounding success. So it's not perfect, don't get me wrong, and I'm sure some people would probably find some faults in it, and that's okay. But I actually kind of like how this one's moving. And this is one of the boss monsters. Now again, this spider is a work in progress right now, so once I get the animation system wired up, I do want to be able to have it work with all of the attack systems and such like that. So, but other than that, I hope you have a great day, and if you like this video, feel free to comment however you like, and feel free to rate it however you like, and comment if you want. And hey, if you really like what I've got going so far, feel free to subscribe. I'd really welcome it. But other than that, I hope you have a great one, and I'll catch you later. Bye.